If you're a career coach looking to increase the lifetime value of your customers, to be able to upsell your customers to more programs and to keep them in your ecosystem for longer, then this is that YouTube video for you. Because what you're about to watch is a live conversation that happened with Tiffany Uman, who has an over 90% conversion rate from her clients from one program to the other, that she spoke about it inside of the Career Coaches community, which is a free community that we offer for career coaches, which we'll put a link below for you to be able to join. But before you go and watch this, let me just share with you some of my biggest takeaways to get you more excited about it. In this conversation, Tiffany talked about how she's been able to grow her career coaching business to over 7 figures. Also, how she's been able to have an impressive 90% renewal rate, meaning that when they buy her program, 90+% of her clients end up upgrading or staying and wanting to pay to stay in her community for longer, which is amazing. One of the things that really stood out is the fact that she talks about building a value ladder for her clients, building an ecosystem that once they're in there, that they don't necessarily need to go work with another career coaches, because she provides different programs to be able to keep her inside of the ecosystem, which is extremely valuable. And it's something that took a long time for me to understand, because I wanted to just help them get jobs and that was it. But there's a value of understanding your niche and be able to provide different services to them. But she talks about it using data to make those decisions. She talked about the importance of starting out with a niche and being able to broaden out as you get bigger. And then we end up talking a lot about different tech stack tools to help you grow your business, and what tech stack tools are needed from the beginning of your business to later on. This is an amazing conversation that I hope that you listen through it the whole time, because it's packed with value for the whole hour, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. If you are new to this channel, my name is Daniel Botero. I create videos like this or create content like this to help fellow career coaches build a more profitable, scalable, and impactful business. As a career coach of over 10 years myself, we have this free community, this free YouTube channel, obviously, to help you build an amazing career coaching business. So if you enjoyed this, you're going to love the community. So make sure you check out the community on school.com/career coaches, and I'll see you inside. All right, welcome to this event for the career coaches community. We have an amazing live event with an amazing guest. I want to introduce you guys. Tiffany, I'm going to actually just tell you, speak from the heart here, not from all
Do
the
I need
things.
Kleenex?
I don't know. It depends. Well,
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
as you guys know, a big part of why I love the community that we're building is collaboration over competition. And I think I've been a career coach for 10 years, and I know, and been on LinkedIn, I've been very active for a long time, but you meet a lot of people. You're going to network with a lot of people. And if you're not already creating a habit to network and meet people, I think you're missing out. One of the best parts about being I say content creator, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram or anything like that, I think you're going to, especially when you're a solopreneur or you have a small team, your fellow coaches, your fellow entrepreneurs are your coworkers, like are the people that you share those battle wounds experiences with. And last year, it was really random because Tiffany is a LinkedIn instructor among many things that she does amazing, right? And she was in Orlando for an event with Diana, Show, and some other creators. And I never met any of them in person, but decided to, we were connected to go and meet them for dinner in Disney Springs. And there's just something really amazing that happens when you actually meet someone in person. So you can make really great connections online, but when you meet someone in person, it is very special. And I remember that, just the relationship that we built with Tiffany and Diana and Show, those 2 days, I think for me, were amazing. The next day I went back to their hotel. We hung out at the pool. We went back to dinner, and just probably 6-7 hours of conversations and relationship building that really speeds up that relationship. And so since then, Tiffany and I have always stayed in contact, found ways to collaborate. And this is a way of Tiffany providing value to me, for her to share some of her time, her expertise with the community and adding value to you guys. And I think that's, to me, the beautiful part of building relationships. As oh, and by the way, like Tiffany's not my client. I am not Tiffany's client. Like we've never exchanged a dollar. Maybe she bought dinner or I bought dinner or I gave her universal tickets, but we don't need, there's no tracking of dollars there. Like I think her and and Diana invited my wife and I to dinner, and I bought her and Diana universal tickets. Right? Like it's things like that, right? It's beautiful. There's nobody's keeping score here except the why that we're no such thing as a long-term relationship if it's not mutually beneficial. So with all that, Tiffany, I'll let you share a little bit about yourself. I just wanted to speak on your values. I wanted to
Oh,
speak on your generosity because I think we all know you're an amazing career coach. There's no way you would have built a business that you've built without it. But I wanted to speak more on that and your personality and how amazing you are because I think you could do a better job speaking about the business you built and then open it up for Q&A for our fellow community members, fellow career coaches to ask questions to you.
sure. Well, I'm really honored to be here, Daniel. And I think it's amazing what you've built already with the career coaches community. I'm big on community, which we'll probably talk about today and the theme of the topic for our chat. But yeah, no, it's great to be amongst everyone. Thank you all that are joining live. And maybe if you can share with me in the chat a little bit more about you as well, and maybe what kind of focus you have in the career coaching space, that'll be really helpful. If there are questions coming up, I can better tailor my responses. So yes, I am Tiffany. I have been full-time in my career coaching business since January of 2021. But I did start it a year prior to that, around March of 2020. It just so happened to coincide with a pandemic that wasn't intentional. Prior to that, I'd say the whole first chapter of my career was over 13 years in corporate, very fruitful career, working primarily at L'Oreal, where I had an accelerated path with 7 promotions in under 10 years. So this is something that I feel very passionate about, helping other professionals really accelerate their own growth, whether that's new job opportunities, promotions, income, all of the above. Well, of course, learning the foundational soft skills and strategy that will set you apart as a peak performer. So that's really where my secret sauce is, where I love zoning in on with my clients. The transition to entrepreneurship was, I'd say, rather unexpected. I also live with my husband, who is a fellow entrepreneur. And so I've been extremely inspired by him and his journey. He's more in the product based type of business, whereas ours, as we know, is much more service based. But I learned a lot just through him and seeing what that experience looked like. And on my end, I had this kind of urge to make a bigger impact, even beyond my corporate work. I'm not a recruiter. I'm not an HR background. I'm really pride myself on the fact that I've lived through everything that my clients are experiencing. So I've really been through that employee route, and that's something that my clients have come to really appreciate about me, that everything is very relatable, empathic, actionable, and proven to work. And so that was something that I really brought in to transitioning into entrepreneurship and building the business from the ground up. I don't know, for those of you joining, if you're at like earlier stages, if you've been doing this a little while, but I literally started from zero my business. I started a brand new social media page on Instagram. I started from a very small following on LinkedIn. I started from zero on TikTok. So it really all started from the ground up back in 2020. But I was very clear on my why. And that's something that's really driven me over the years of staying true to that. I know it can be very easy to see what others are doing and sometimes feel like, oh, I should be doing this, or maybe I should be on that platform, or maybe I should shift in that direction. But I can't emphasize enough the importance of staying true to who you are and why you really got into this space. Like, who are the people you want to serve? What is that why, that driving force that's going to keep you going even when the days are really hard, when the business isn't going the way that you want? I've been really fortunate to have built our business into a 7-figure business as of last year, which is something I'm really proud of. But for sure, it had its highs and lows along the way. Happy to share more about that if you guys are interested. But we've really started from more of a one-to-one business model that fairly quickly transitioned into a group structured model as of late 2020, and has pretty much remained in more of a group structured fashion. I do still do some one-to-one coaching, but it's much more limited. I really have my signature program and then some complementary programs that also funnel clients into my primary program, which has also helped very much in building lifetime value, which is one of the themes of today. So I can definitely share more insights on that. But I think one of the biggest things that I'm really proud of, especially as of the last year, is the community element. And I know it's the topic that we have for today, where even just in the last 6 months alone, we've seen now up to a 90% renewal and upgrade rate of our clients, meaning that we've really built something that's allowing them to stay in our ecosystem. If it's okay, Daniel, I'm going to share something that one of my prior coaches had shared with me. And I learned a lot through her, but this was one thing that's just like really stuck. And she was explaining how you want to really build out that value ladder for your clients, because if you don't have an offer for them and they require that, well, they're going to go to someone else. And so I'd say as of last year, I started getting really intentional about that in the growth anchors of my business. And for me, community was a real anchor to be able to bring that all together. So both from a portfolio standpoint, but also in the way that we delight and serve my customers and make sure that they feel so connected with the mission, the vision that we're building. So I know that was a little bit of a long intro. I'm just kind of keeping it a little bit more high level for now, but I'm sure we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty a little bit more around my journey that's gotten me here.
Love it. Tiffany, I have a question for you. And again, I don't want this to be, I can always ask a million questions to Tiffany. So if you guys do have questions, like exactly what happens every single time we do some events, we're gonna run out of time, right? And so ask your questions, put it in the chat. We'll call your name. We'll let you unmute yourself, right? And first come, first serve, we'll start there. And while we have people ask questions, if not, I will ask you questions. I want to ask you about the value ladder that you just spoke about, which is a big reason why 90% of your clients are renewing, which is amazing. Do you suggest starting out with a value ladder, or if you're a brand new coach, maybe you are haven't even gotten to like $10,000 a month, right? You're trying to
Mhm.
get to your six figure, right?
Yeah.
Do you suggest starting with one program, get you to a certain level, then add the value ladder, or just try to build out the whole product suite from there?
Mm. No, it's a great question, Daniel. I actually recommend starting with focusing on one. Becoming a master of your craft, especially if you're newer in the coaching space or this is a new avenue, and in my case, it definitely was. Like that whole first year back in 2020 was an experimentation year. I was like, I got to get this out there. I got to beta test. I got to really learn from my clients as much as possible to be able to see if this has traction beyond a certain subset of clients that I thought I'd be serving. And so there's a lot of value in building out one really signature, like flagship program that will likely be your bread and butter. Like even to this day, that program that I started back in 2020 is still my flagship program. It's evolved a lot over time. And that kind of ties to the second piece, Daniel, which I think is more important at the beginning, especially, but even over time, is building out more around the client experience. Because you don't actually need, and this I'll share it in my case, you don't actually need more programs. Like if you are really creating a space where they feel truly connected and that there's more value than just the framework that you're coaching them through or whatnot, then there could be a real reason for them to stay. And back last year, when I was starting to build out my value ladder, I only started doing this in like year 3 of my business, where I said, hey, you know what? There's actually an opportunity to bring in another program that's a little complementary to my primary one and use that more as like a springboard to bring people into my flagship. So something that was a little bit lower level of investment, something that was a bit broader in scope. And we've had a pretty solid upgrade rate from that program into my primary one. But more recently, what we're seeing is actually people wanting to stay in my primary program. And that was a real aha moment where I'm like, they've kind of already learned the material. They've already achieved their target goal that we set out to do. And yet they're, asking, Kate, can I stay? What are the options? What do you offer? How can I still be a part of this? And so that was a really good insight that I'm happy to share with everyone around that you don't necessarily need more programs to maximize retention of your clients. It could be experiential based. It could be community based, right? So maybe just start thinking of it like that if you haven't already, so that it takes a little bit of pressure off of feeling like you need to have like 5 different programs. If that's what you want to do, of course, go for it. But it is going to spread your energy differently as well. And so I'm a bit more of an advocate of focusing on something and doing it really well, and then seeing how you could up level that one thing And then, yes, if it comes to a point where maybe you've reached a certain income level, or you're like, okay, there's just a clear opportunity. For instance, there's a new program I'm actually in the process of developing because the opportunity from my data is just like so evidently clear that I need a standalone offer for that. But again, it's the data that's guiding me. It's not just, oh, I think I need this, and that sounds like a nice thing to have. It's strategic. So if your insights data is guiding you in a direction that's supporting some other element in your value ladder, go for it. But definitely like walk before you run so that you are doing things really well and become a master of your craft.
Yeah, that's awesome. I totally agree with you. That's why I wanted to get your insight, because I think a mistake that I for sure made in my early careers is like the new shiny object syndrome, right? Like I would try to compare myself with so many other career coaches, and I would compare my day one, my stage one, to somebody else's chapter 10, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
year five. And that made me feel sometimes like a failure. But the reality is, like, I'm looking at someone else's highlight reel. I'm comparing myself to somebody who's been in business 3, 4, 5 years longer than I have. And
Yeah.
that's not a really fair comparison, even though we all have our own story. And I think if I can give an advice, it's like, you know, start simple as possible when it's just you, when you're a solopreneur, just simple as possible. One program, one marketing funnel, simplify that so you get to the stage where, whether that is $10,000 a month or $30,000 a month, is something that you feel like, hey, I can control this. And now you have resources and you have more data to then say, okay, where do I expand? What is there a different, do I keep one program and just expand in a marketing funnel, or do I keep the same marketing funnel and expand to different programs and just upsell my clients, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like, when I, even from our conversations, I love the fact that you, and I think a lot has to do, like, your husband is so, when we talk, like, very operational driven. And so you're looking at the data, you're looking at the KPIs, and you're running this coaching business like if it was a Fortune 500 company. And I mean, that's the goal. Like, we definitely need to get there if we want to grow this big. And so, Tiffany, super awesome to hear the evolution. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree with you, Daniel. It's so well put, right? We have to have that CEO hat. I think
Mhm.
that's something that I've actually kind of struggled with in the past. Of I love the coaching element of my business. It's why I started this business, because I wanted to coach. But yet it kind of gets to this point where you're kind of pulled in both directions. It's like, what do you need that coaching element to look like so that you can also focus on building the machine and building
Mhm.
the machine that runs the machine, and all of that. So that's been a big learning curve as well in this whole journey.
Yeah, love it. So, Sindo, you're the first person. Do you want to unmute yourself? You want me to read the comment?
Sure, I could
Yeah.
unmute, ask. So my question was, like, how do you kind of decide on the structure of the program that you're offering? And is it like cohort based? If so, like, how do you kind of like run it, or like how often do you
Yeah, that's a great
open it
question.
up? And what was like your process or thinking when you decided to structure that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't think there's any right or wrong way of going about it, but I can definitely share how I had approached it. So when I first started building my now flagship program, I started it on a one-to-one basis because I'm big on validating and experimenting. So that was sort of my mindset going through this entire process. So the first part of that experiment, Cindo, was more around, okay, I have a framework in mind that I think is very beneficial because it served me and my teams very well in what I coach. Now I need to vet that. I need to see, is this going to apply to people from different backgrounds, different fields, different industries? So that was my first experiment and why I wanted to do it on a one-to-one basis so I can go really deep and make sure I wasn't leaving any stone unturned. Once I got to a certain point, my first year I had worked with about like 25 one-to-one clients before I felt like I had vetted enough to say, okay, now I'm repeating myself a lot. I'm saying the similar things. This is now giving me that shift of pushing it now into more of a group structured program. And so the nature of the framework, Cindo, was the same because I was like, okay, that part's vetted. Now I need to experiment on the structure. Okay. So that's where I took that as the next step and say, okay, what in my ideal world would this structure look like? And so as I started launching group versions of that program, I did do it cohort based, meaning that it was an like on and off. You couldn't enroll at any time. It was really specific periods where I was open cart, close cart, open cart, close cart, Because again, I wanted to have this closed container of members going through my program in the exact same cadence to then evaluate what's that dynamic? Or how's the community element going? Do they appreciate? What do they appreciate about it? It still had a lot of my own one-to-one support as well, which I kind of qualify as like on-demand support with me. So that was still something I wanted to do, and I still offer to this day, but it was more that community interaction. And when I started the program in a group format, I didn't have a lot of like the software tools that I use today. So that just from like a tech stack standpoint has evolved over time. But I'm just like, let's just get this going and learn and grow and like use these to guide my future experiments. So after I ran, I'd say maybe like the first 2 cohorts that were very cohort based, then I was like, okay, this is going well. But through that, I then saw an opportunity to go more evergreen, because a lot of the exchanges that were happening amongst the community were actually weaving in between the material. And although there is a cadence I recommend to go through my framework, that is very interrelated. And so then with my next cohort, I was still doing cohort based at the time, but I structure it more where we can welcome people even outside of the cohort. And I'm just going to guide them from when they start to when they finish, even if other members have already started. So that was kind of my experimentation, Sindo, around doing more evergreen approach. And then that started working really well. So I'm like, okay, so now I don't need to just do on and off. I will have launch periods in the year where there's our big peaks of enrollment, but I don't need to tell people that they can't join outside of that because it's proven to work. And so these were just some of these intentional shifts. And now to this day, it is an evergreen program. We have members joining every month. I do have launch moments where I make it more worth their while to join so that we still have bigger peaks of enrollment at certain moments of the year. But the structure has been fairly similar in terms of the type of support they get from me, the type of support they get from other experts on the program. And it's more just the softwares that we use that facilitate that to have this kind of ongoing exchange. And I'm still, working through, I'm always trying to say, okay, is this the right software? I'm the type that I like challenging myself like every few months, every year of like, how can I do this better? How can I make it even better? How can I improve that experience even more? Even if that's not feedback I'm getting, it's more just my own standard of like using my own self as my benchmark. So that's kind of how I've done it, of taking kind of just these key variables that I've tried to isolate and experiment and validate to then continue building on. And I think that's why it's grown so rapidly, because I didn't take any shortcuts to get there. I did like the work that was needed to then kind of leap into that next phase of growth. I hope that clarifies. Let me know if you want any additional insights.
Great. Thank you. That was very insightful. And that was what I was kind of like looking to get guidance on. So
Okay, great. Yeah, I think there's another question too,
Yeah,
Daniel. You want me to
Chetan.
take that one?
Yeah. Yep.
Hi, really
Hi.
nice connecting with you. Thank you so much, Daniel, for organizing this. I mean, leading the community. I can't thank you enough for this. And excited to connect with you, Tiffany. I'm already excited for the information that you shared. I have a few follow-up questions and then I'll go back to my questions first. May
Sure.
I? Is it okay, Daniel? Thank you. So one is, I really love the part where you mentioned that you validate with data, right? So I'm going to start doing that and challenge myself is the other 2 key takeaways from the previous answer. But how long did that 25 client of yours took for you to validate that you should have a new program is the first part of the question. And then the follow-up courses that you follow-up programs that you offered, right, as to create a higher lifetime value, were those related around career? Because if not, then how do you position yourself as somebody who can help you otherwise as well, if you have already positioned yourself as a career coach or a as a career coach for international students specifically, right, on LinkedIn or in the world outside? So how do you
Yeah.
position yourself if you're going to do that? So
Okay.
those are the few questions, please.
I'll tackle those first. Okay, perfect. So for your first question, it's probably going to be different for everyone. I had pretty strict timelines for myself of when I wanted to have experimented and vetting done. So when I started, it was back in March. At that time, I was working with free beta clients. I was like, okay, I'm going to take on 3 free ones. And if I'm seeing enough like synergy, I'm already going to shift into paid clients. So by about early May, so I started in mid-March, by early May, I shifted into my first paid client. And then by the end of August, so from May to August, I had completed those 25 one-to-one clients. So it was about like a 3-month program that I had offered then. And so I'm like, okay, I got a 3-month window. It was a little bit of side note. I was on maternity leave at the time. I had both kids at home. So you can imagine not much time in the day to do this. So I was hustling pretty hard. I was using my evenings during the week for client calls. I'd have like 2 back-to-back 90-minute calls with clients pretty much every weeknight for those 3 months. And I would work on the weekend to do other things for the business. I was sort of a short-term pain for a longer-term gain, and I don't regret it. And I intentionally made time for my family in the days when I was with my kids. So it was tough, but again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning of knowing your why. Because I'm like, if I didn't feel really passionate about the work I was doing, there's no way I would have had that self-discipline to go when you're exhausted and like running on adrenaline. So if anyone can relate, you're not alone. But that was kind of the time frame that I gave for myself to have like a 3-month window. I think it's good to have deadlines because otherwise experiments can go on forever. And I think it's good for you to have a gauge of what are those metrics for success. Like for me, when I went into that phase of one-to-one clients, I'm like, I want to see, am I starting to share the same thing multiple times where it means that I can now package this together in more of a one-to-many setting. I wanted to make sure I can do this across different functions because at the beginning, it tended to be more like marketing and sales professionals because my background is marketing. But I'm like, this could probably work beyond that because it's like nothing function specific that I focus on. And so I started working with engineers, with accountants, with finance, with, a whole bunch of different functions and industries that also did that vetting. So by that time, those were kind of like my 2 core things that I wanted to test. I had the validation. And so that's what helped me shift in. If I understood your second question well, it was if you're starting to build out maybe different programs that are in slightly of a different direction, how do you kind of maintain like your positioning if you're positioning yourself as a coach for like international students or whatever it is? There's always ways that you can kind of tweak your branding in that way, but I do believe it's helpful to have a core umbrella. So even if I use myself as the example, I've always kind of positioned myself from the beginning as a career strategy coach because I focus on a lot of the strategy element of career acceleration. But with time, I also started to layer in the fact of workplace expertise. So now, when I talk or I share, I really position myself as a career strategy coach and workplace expert, because that's also a whole facet of other things that I support my clients on that help them get those tangible end goals. If we don't know how to manage those inner workings and how to master your workplace, it's going to be really hard to accelerate the growth track associated with that. So for me, they go really hand in hand, but they're slightly different focuses. So if there's a way of finding this kind of like synergistic umbrella, I encourage that. I would try to avoid having very different directions, especially early on, because that can be confusing. But as you grow in notoriety, in following, that's where you start to get more liberties because people kind of know you for something. And I think for all of us who follow major creators like, the Lewis Howes of this world or like the Jay Shettys of this world or whatever, there's a bunch of different things that they cover, but probably when they started, it was much more focused in one direction. So kind of use that as your kind of like your meter of how focused you should be to then how broader you should build that out to with time. But I do believe that personal branding is really important and you don't want to have too many conflicting messages because then you're not really known for something. And if you're not known for something, then it can give you challenges in attracting the right client who might not know that like, okay, you're the go-to for that. And that's pretty valuable, especially in the earlier stages.
Got it. So can I go back to my original question before you
Yeah, yeah.
jump to that?
Really quick though,
Perfect. Yeah.
really quick, just to add, that's why it's so important in the beginning for you to have a niche. Because
Yeah.
when you're small and you're starting out and you don't have 100,000 plus followers, the only way you're going to be able to beat the Goliaths of the world, like the Tiffany's that have 200,000 followers all across, right? Or it's by you being differentiated in your particular niche, whether that is an industry, whether that's a location, whether that is international students, right? And then as you get bigger, you can now have the flexibility to go to a more broader audience. And you see that like it's like the playbook, because I even remember Austin, he had a much smaller niche before he had 1 million, and now he's
Yeah.
just, I help all job seekers, right? And you see that over again, because when you could get to a point where you outgrow your niche, but at that point you have so many testimonials that you can expand your niche, and your testimonial
Yeah,
carry you, and your
totally.
reach carry you.
It's so good,
Yeah.
Daniel. And I can even share like my personal example with that, because when I started, my niche was serving young professionals,
Yeah.
specifically in corporate. I was like, that's my passion zone, that year 1 to 7, where we don't get a lot of this training. We're just kind of thrown into the lion's den. It's like, good luck, figure it out. Where a lot of these trainings and supports happen more kind of more senior level plus. And so I thought that was going to be like my thing forever. But with time, and I think as you grow in your content and your following, I realized I was actually attracting even more like mid-stage plus professionals, or people that I thought would have already figured that out, where they're like, actually, no, like I still actually need a lot of help on this. And so now, like, actually my core is much more mid-stage plus professionals, and even more like senior in their career, not necessarily executive level. We have a bit of that, but really that kind of mid-stage level of career. And I don't actually have that many young professionals anymore. And I find that's actually helped the client experience, because once they've kind of gotten some of this under their belt, now they have a better sense of what they want, where they want to go, but they're just facing these roadblocks to get there. So you'll also probably see through your own learnings how that evolves, but I couldn't agree more with Daniel. Like, having a very specific focus is going to do a world of good as a starting point for sure.
As someone that's done your niche, like am in your niche, start with helping international students get a job. Then your secondary program more likely will be to help them get their H-1B, right? Like, so once they get a job, they still are in OPT. Then your next program is to help them get promoted, because for most immigrants, they don't understand how to navigate the corporate culture, which leads to them not getting promoted, even though their work ethic is second to none. So like a lot of international students that I like work with, their technical skills are great. Their communication skills, one, because I think they just are more introverted just by their major, but also culturally speaking. And so there's even a thing called the bamboo ceiling. That's why people from different Asian countries struggle to get promoted. Anyways, we could talk more about it later, but that's how I would be thinking about
No,
my
this
niche.
is gold for me, man. Thank you so much, Daniel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
But
your other question, right, was the stepping
Yes.
stones to building a high LTV for somebody who is just starting. I would say that, I mean, there's different steps you can take, but you don't have to necessarily think like 20 steps ahead. I'd say at each step that you're at, really think about how can you really create an amazing client experience.
Okay.
Like, put yourself in their shoes, what they're feeling, what they're going through, identify with their pain points, and really ask yourself, what's the best version of this that I can offer? Maybe you won't have all the resources and whatnot at this time to do that, but just already thinking in that way is then going to come back, and maybe you'll funnel back and say, okay, so maybe that's something I'll do in like the next year, but at least right now, this is like a non-negotiable that I want to have to offer in my program, because that's something that's going to be really helpful. Also, just on a side note, maybe you've talked about this, Daniel, in like previous sessions that you've had, but like talk with your clients. Talk with people, market research. Like, if you're wondering, like, what would people really need from me that are going through this? Like, get on some market research calls. I did that a lot at the beginning, just to understand, like, what is it that they really need? What are these pain points? What would they most require in terms of support? So you can also see, okay, if I deliver on that and I do that really well, and I, have some ideas of how I can retain them or keep them within our ecosystem, then you're already building into lifetime value, right? So it's kind of a bit of a learn as you go, but being intentional also around what do you want that to look like, and how can you really have them be such a big part of what you're building. That connection, that community element is so crucial.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. Thank you so much. I really
You're
appreciate that,
welcome.
man.
You're welcome.
So the next question, Tutor, by the way, welcome to the community. Now, this is your first week. Super excited that you're here. Go ahead. Yeah, unmute yourself. You ask your question. This is your time, man.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, it's actually the second day. So
Oh, fresh off
um,
the press. I love it.
exactly. So I'm kind of wondering what made you decide between one-on-ones and group? Because I've not done group. So I'm wondering what made you kind of decide and pivot to that area and
Mm.
the cohorts? Is that helpful for, focusing on careers? Because people have different aspirations. So
Mhm.
how you work through that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd say there were kind of two primary factors, Tudor. The first was when it comes to one-to-one, it takes a lot of energy, a lot of time and energy. Like when you're doing one-to-one, you're literally trading time for money. There's not really any way around it. You're trading time, you're getting money, trading time and money. So that was sort of the first factor. I was like, okay, this is great from like a learning standpoint. And I don't regret it at all. Like I, even with new coaches, I talk to them like, do one-to-one. And they're like, but I want to do group right away. I'm like, do one-to-one first. Like you need to get that depth of learning to vet your stuff. So that way, when you do group, you're that much more prepared. Again, everyone will do what they want, but I really believe in that a lot. So there's the learning element, but it's going to be that exchange for time and money. So that leads to the second factor, which is the scalability of the business. One-to-one, depending how you do it, is kind of only so scalable as to your own capacity. Now, of course, there's ways that you can scale one-to-one, especially if you maybe bring in other experts or other assistant coaches or whatever that kind of build out a one-to-one anchor or branch of your company that can still offer that, but it's not only you delivering it. Because if it does remain that it's only you delivering the one-to-one, it's going to be very hard to scale that. And I'm just very protective of my time, especially like I said, in my first year, I like traded a lot of my time for building. And as of year two, I'm like, I need to rebalance that. And so that was a big motivator for me of being able to serve more people at once and get time back in my day that can also then focus on business building and other paths that I wanted to take. And so those are two key things I would say to consider when you're shifting from one-to-one to group. They both serve their purposes. Like I said, one-to-one could also be very lucrative, like depending if you're charging high ticket for one-to-one services, you can have like a fully one-to-one business if you want. It really depends on your goals and your vision and what type of growth you want to have in your business. But there's a lot of wealth of insight that can come from one-to-one specifically. Group is definitely much more scalable. And I will say probably something that we all end up encountering when we shift to group is the questioning from clients of, well, I don't know if I need group. Like I want one-to-one support, or like, I don't know if I want to be in a community. When, at least in my experience, it's always been like one of the favorite elements of my programs is the community. They just don't know it because they don't have that in their life right now, right? And so I think being able to create that level of relatability of being surrounded by people who, are going through similar things, who can support, who can help guide, in addition to what they're getting from your own support, is actually really cathartic in a lot of ways and helps them feel like they're part of something bigger. So you might just need to have some kind of like wording around that so that they see it really as a valuable element of your program instead of something that might lead them to just want to do one-to-one alone. But you could absolutely still integrate one-to-one elements in your program so they kind of get the best of both worlds. And then like that, it's more sustainable for you.
Yeah, awesome.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Giselle, good to see you. Did you want to ask, or should I just read it?
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm driving because I'm picking up kids from school. So that's why I didn't turn on the camera. But yeah, my question is, I know you mentioned with group, you've tried different technologies. What would you say if you were starting, what would work best?
Okay, it's a great question. Giselle, are you referring to like program portal or just overall like softwares and tech stack?
Honestly, if you don't mind covering all of it, I've been teaching this material for 20 years and at local universities, and I finally like decided to do this on my own. So I'm coming around differently, but it's been great to work with individuals one-on-one and long-term thinking about, I mean, I've actually started with just a group of friends doing it as a group,
Yeah.
and I see the value. But I haven't delved into all the technology that's out there. So anything that you can give us as advice would be great.
Sure. Yeah, I love that. I'm excited for you taking this more independent path. I will say, at the beginning, especially if it's earlier stages, you don't necessarily need to like break your head. Like I can tell you in my case, I used to do this via Google Drive, where I would have like for my one-to-one clients, they'd each have their respective Google Drive. I'd save all the resources there, and that was kind of the extent of it. And then we'd have more of a messaging platform. I've used like apps like Voxer, which is a free messaging app, which is great for one-to-one support, kind of like a walkie-talkie app. I still actually use that for my one-to-one clients that I choose to work with. But with time, if you're trying to really digitize your knowledge and to be able to get, once again, time back and make it a little bit more professional, you'll probably want to partner with some type of course platform. Now, everyone has different schools of thought of this. There's not one that's necessarily like, I mean, the companies will argue there's one that's better than the other, but I think it's more around what is your style that you prefer. Like there's certain platforms that are like all in one, and then ones that are more specialized in what they do. So my path, not that I necessarily recommend it because it is more complex, but luckily I have a great technical support that helps me with this because that's not my forte. But I'm a bit more the path of I want to work with the partner that is an expert in that. So for instance, for my program portal, I use Kajabi. I personally really enjoy it. I've done programs on Kajabi. I've done programs on Teachable. I've done programs on Thinkific. The user interface of Kajabi is just the one that I resonate with the most. I find it's the most user-friendly. And I've just loved it. I've worked with that pretty much from when I went into group coaching back in 2020. But of course, Kajabi is also one of these platforms that has like email, it has community, it has all these different things. But I'm not necessarily leveraging those resources because I have other programs that I'm using and softwares that I prefer. So for instance, with the community support that I offer, I actually use Slack. I'm actually toying with bringing that into my community platform that I have now on Circle. So that might be a bit of a mid to longer term strategy that I'm doing. But I've actually really loved Slack because it allows me to do the one-to-one support. It allows the community element to be super dynamic. Our members really enjoy it. So that's one platform. And I use the free version of Slack, by the way. Like you don't even need the paid version. And we have quite a lot of members in our program at one time. And so it just shows like you can get pretty far with a free version. And that's been great because I'm able to centralize all of my like coaching support and community support in one place. And then I have my content housed in a certain platform. But definitely do your research, Giselle, in terms of which platform feels like the most connected with you. I have, fellow coaches who love, Teachable, like, and they swear by it, and other ones that are on Thinkific and they swear by it. And there's probably all other ones, popping up left, right, and center. So do your research to see which one fits you best. And a lot of these companies offer like free trials and things like that, where you can get a real feel if you like it or not. Outside of that, I also have like my email platform. And again, I wanted to use one that I preferred. So I could have done it in Kajabi, but I actually have been using ConvertKit as my primary email provider from the beginning. So that's one I choose, but there's so many different ones that you can use as well, again, depending on your needs. So if you want to simplify things and have everything kind of under one umbrella, Kajabi is a really good resource because they have a lot of that already baked in. They even have a community element baked in now as well. So just a few foods for thought to reflect on, but I'd say try to do trials if you can, just to vet it for yourself and see what you are gravitating towards the most. Each one's going to have their own advantages, so you could see what makes sense for you.
Thank you so very much.
Giselle, I would also say watch YouTube videos on them a lot, because what I found when we do trials is that, like, especially Kajabi, I love Kajabi too, so I'm a big fan. And I think a lot of my clients, I always say use Kajabi because it has everything. So I think, but I would say they do the 14-day trial and you start putting your website and so it gets super sticky and it's super hard to leave.
Oh yeah. It's kind of probably their marketing ploy for sure.
Yeah, that's
right?
the whole point, right? So I would
reel
say,
you in.
I would just say, but like I think there's a lot of YouTube on Kajabi, like tons of it. Kajabi, School is really good where our community is, and that's $99 a month, and you can add courses. The only thing is the chat integration doesn't allow you to do like group chats. It's just the community page. But yeah, I think Tiffany, you
Yeah.
totally agree with your advice.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
also actually using Circle now as well for my like primary community, which I enjoy a lot. So that's where I'm seeing, am I going to maybe merge from Slack into that entirely? I know it has the capabilities for that. I'm just working through. So we'll see if we get to that at one point. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's watching YouTube's like do that research for anything really, any equipment that you want to buy, like any softwares you're looking to use. There's so many amazing YouTube videos. I've done
Yeah.
my fair share of like going down that rabbit hole.
The tech is sticky, and like the problem is like you start adding subscriptions and they start adding up, but you don't realize it. I mean, we do that at home too with all the streaming, but
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if any of you guys are using things like Zapier,
yeah,
but if you have things that you need to connect between platforms,
yeah,
it's pretty great. Like we use Zapier a lot.
yeah, Zapier.
I use Make for some other automations that I have as well. It's kind of an alternative to Zapier that's a little bit less expensive.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's kind of a solution for everything. So it kind of goes to what I was saying earlier of think about like what your ideal vision is and then
yes,
see what best supports that
yeah,
rather than starting with like the details and kind of getting too micro about it.
yeah,
I think that's a good way of going about it, especially in the earlier stages as
yeah.
you're feeling it out for the first few months or first year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is your newsletter through ConvertKit or what platform do you suggest?
It is. Yeah. So my newsletter, all of my email marketing and newsletter is directly in ConvertKit.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's probably ideal having it all under one email provider because obviously you want your subs all in one place.
yeah.
And for like tagging and automations and funnels and things like that, I would recommend keeping it all under one umbrella. Yeah.
I agree. I think Kajabi, if you're starting out, it pretty much has 99% of what you need as a career coach. It has, you can put your
Yeah.
posts there. It has community, not the best community platform. Email, it has payments, processing. Your whole website can go on Kajabi with all the landing pages can go on Kajabi.
Yeah. It's pretty
Um,
solid.
pretty
I'm
solid.
actually based in Canada, and so they don't have payments yet,
Oh,
which like really sucks. So I've always had to kind of go through my payments separately
like
through
Stripe?
my website and Stripe. Yeah, Stripe's
Yeah.
my back end processor. So I
Mm,
mean, it's easy enough, but I
mhm.
think that's great with Kajabi, where you could literally, if you're based in the US, you can have it all baked in, and then they're rolling payments out to other markets. So it's supposed to
Yeah.
come to Canada this year. It just hasn't yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions you guys have? Oh, there you go.
What are the must-haves for a coach in the initial phases in terms of tools and skills? Oh, that's a
Skills
loaded
maybe
question.
skills may be a bigger discussion, but I would love to hear your thoughts, please, Tiffany.
Okay. I mean, let's start with tools.
Yeah.
I'd say, keep it as simple as possible. Daniel said it so well. Like, I can tell you it's much more important to just get started and kind of have messy action than get caught up in like, okay, I need this to be perfect and I need a perfect content portal. I mean, you'll never get anything done like that. Like you're going to stand in your own way. So I think just being resourceful and focusing on, how are you going to get leads? Like that's like probably the most important skill set you need at the beginning is like,
Right.
I need to bring
Yeah.
in leads. Without
Yeah.
leads, there's no business.
Yeah.
So when I was starting, like I said, I started from zero. I wasn't present on LinkedIn for reasons that I didn't really want my employer to know about while I was on mat leave. And so I started like a brand new Instagram page. I didn't even want it to do with my personal page because I'm typically pretty private on a personal level. And I was never even really in the know about social media. So it was a big learning curve at the beginning, but I'm like, I need to get leads. Like, so for me, and to this day, it's been like 100% organically built business. I don't do paid ads. Maybe one day I will, but for now I don't do paid ads. So I leaned a lot into content creation as my anchor. And I guess my tool was Instagram, like just simply put, like I didn't even have a website at the beginning. I only had a website built out like 2.5 months into starting my business. So I was literally cold DMing people on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And because again, I didn't want to make content. I was just like, I want to do this behind the scenes. So I got my LinkedIn premium account, started cold DMing people every month and getting intro calls booked that way. And through Instagram, I was very DM heavy. So I would be building content. And just because it's my nature, I love building relationships. I was like, I'm just going to interact with my audience. I'm going to literally message at the beginning. I messaged every single person who followed me and thanked them for following my page. And that started conversation, right? They'd be like, oh, you're welcome. And then I would ask, what are you most looking forward to learning from me here? And it would spark a conversation and I'd get to learn more about them. And then it would lead into intro calls. It was like actually very granular at the beginning, but I didn't have any fancy software. I didn't have a website. I didn't have any crazy funnels. It was just like relationships. And I know Daniel's been really big on that also with his business of like outreach and connecting with people. So I think that's something that is often underrated at the beginning because you feel like I have to get all these tools and softwares and all of that set up, which is great. And the sooner you can do that, the better, because then you're just going to have everything in one place and you won't have to change and then change again. But don't underestimate the importance of just like going out there and finding your people. I think we all read these amazing
Makes
books
sense.
that it's like leads come in just like that.
Yeah.
Not always the case. You have to kind of work for it, but lean into the things that will help you really double down in that area. That's probably like the most important thing. Because when you're getting leads in coming consistently, you're going to learn, okay, what is your conversion rate? From there, okay, how many calls do I need to book in a month to get a certain amount of sales, right? It's just math. It's a rule of numbers at that point. So the sooner you learn those stats, the more in control of your monthly revenue you're going to be, and the faster you can start scaling up. So I can go into more like specific skills and tools, but I just want to
Okay.
keep it simple
Makes sense.
because I think
Okay.
those are really the most important things in that initial phase. I don't know, Daniel, if you
Perfect.
want to add anything to
Yeah,
that.
I think like if you like, we start at like level 1, 0, or like you're at 0. All you need is social media and Zoom. All you promote
Perfect.
Yeah, there
DMs,
you go. Zoom. That was the
one-on-one
one that I
Zoom,
had.
right? Like
101 Zoom.
one-on-one
Yeah.
Zoom.
Perfect.
That like shows you like that's like you don't even have an LLC. You don't even need to tell your employers, like your DM people, Zoom.
Zoom.
Then you're like, okay, you know what? I'm ready to make this business. I just think the next thing is Kajabi or something like a Kajabi where you can build your website on Kajabi. You don't need a tech team. You can build landing pages on Kajabi. You could create offers on Kajabi. You can record videos on Zoom. My videos are recorded. I want to on a Zoom meeting like this. I record myself. I download the video. I upload it to Kajabi. I create the PDFs on Canva. So then maybe Canva is another one, right?
And it's free. Like
And
these
it's
are all
free.
free
Yeah, use the
softwares.
free
Yeah.
one. The only one that costs there that you might need to pay for is Kajabi. That so far. And then once when you get to the thing where you're getting 2 to 3 clients a month, or like you're getting some traction, I would then suggest you get like a CRM because you want to make sure you're not losing money for not following up on clients.
Yeah.
But that's it. Like I mean, really, you need like if you wanted more advanced, like kind of like the tech stack that I use, and I tell my clients like Zoom, Loom, Kajabi, Slack. Slack is free. By the way, you don't need to pay for that. I have 800 people in my career coaching Slack channel free. Free. I use the free
Nice.
Slack. I don't need any of the other. So yeah, and now I added school for the community. I tried the Kajabi community. I didn't like it. But when your business is a little bit bigger, you have the luxury to be like, okay, I'm willing to pay 2 subscriptions because this one's slightly better, and slightly better when you have a good process. It's like you can make it up. But when you're starting out, all the free ones work.
Perfect.
Kajabi, everything Kajabi has. I have my podcast on Kajabi. My emails is through Kajabi. My course is through Kajabi. Payments is through Kajabi. Websites through Kajabi. Analytics is through Kajabi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. My question was more from the point of view of somebody mentioned newsletter, and that's why. Would that be some of the must-haves? Like it would be a good to have a newsletter or a must-have newsletter?
You're going
News-
to like marketing now, right? Like
Yeah.
marketing, like
So
what do you need to
Marketing
market?
efforts.
Yeah.
So
Got it.
newsletter
Okay.
would be considered more of a long form content, right? So I kind of see
Right.
that in building more of that nurture strategy. So it's rare that a newsletter is like bringing immediate conversion. It's a trust builder. And I actually just launched my official newsletter last August because I wanted to really bolster my community even more, and it's been very beneficial for that. But it's not necessarily a primary lead generator. It can be, like, especially if you build an amazing newsletter that people want to be a part of, it can be a great call to action. And I'm a fan of that because it gets people off platform and into your ecosystem, right? With social media algorithms changing every day, I'm just kind of in a headspace now of like, I want to just bring people into my email and be able to talk to them more that way. So it's been a big focus. But it is more of like a trust building nurture strategy. And whereas, short form content, and whether it's video or more like social media content, that's more reach based, right? So you kind of just want to see which direction makes the most sense to focus. You'll probably need both. There's a lot of reasons why like building a YouTube early on is really helpful because it's very SEO driven. There's so many paths you can take, but once again, run before you walk, walk before you run, I should say, because
Okay.
all of these require quite a bit of time and energy if you want to do it really well.
Hmm.
So if you just want to start building up more like content on LinkedIn or content on Instagram, you don't need to have a newsletter tomorrow. I think it's great
Got
to
it.
have that as a vision if you want to build into that.
Okay.
But if you really want to start bringing in regular leads,
Mhm.
it's more that approach in marketing. This is my marketing hat coming on. That's going to help. That's going to help a lot, right? And the beauty of using platforms like a LinkedIn or an Instagram, it's so engaging. Like literally, you can reply back to people who watch your stories on Instagram. You could DM your following, so long as they have a public profile. Like there's just so much ease to do that.
Mm.
Yes, it might be a little bit more manual at the beginning, but it's like your people are right there. Whereas with email, it's more of a one-way communication, right? Even newsletter, you could have call to actions where they respond, but does everybody know, right? And so you just want to kind of understand what is the
Got it.
purpose behind each of the platforms and the marketing that you're putting out there to help you in building that volume.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Kyle, last question belongs to you, sir.
Awesome. Yeah. So you had mentioned having two kids. I resonate with that. I've got three kids under 7, and started the business like essentially the month that my youngest was born. And so I'm just curious how you've like kind of managed both as you can hear, both your time with like growing the business. It feels like, with certain things, there's a clear path. There's a clear path that I see of like exactly what I need to do, but like managing what you know that you need to do and like the ever-growing task list with the kind of uncertainties that come with parenting. And maybe the answer is like you just have to grow slower, or I'm just curious how you manage that. And then maybe like from a tactical perspective, when you were going through that kind of like that sacrifice period, what that looked like from a time perspective on like a daily, weekly schedule.
Yeah, it's such a good question, Kyle. I totally empathize, and congrats on 3 beautiful kids. I'll start with one kind of preface statement, which is the flexibility that you are giving yourself by doing your business to be able to be with your kids is priceless. Like I can't tell you the amount of times that I've had to like just like throw my week out the window because my kids were sick, or something came up and I'm like, that would have been a lot harder to do when I was working in corporate. So these are the kinds of things that although it's like, oh shoot, like I had this whole plan this week, I choose to see it from a different lens of like, wow, like I'm really thankful that I can actually have that flexibility. Sure, it's not ideal. No one wants to see their kid sick, but it's like I can be there for them, or I can just rearrange these calls, or I can just, work it around with my team or whatever it is. So I think that's something, Kyle, that you'll come to really appreciate in managing those uncertain moments. From a more tactical standpoint, and this is something I did even from the very beginning, and I still do it to this day, is focus on 3 core goals at any one time. And you could break this down very granularly. So what I would do, even at the very early stages where time was very limited, I would give myself like 3 core goals every week, like business goals for the business. I'd say, okay, these are 3 things I want to get done this week. And I would then take those goals and break them down into 3 micro daily goals. So for instance, when I was, let's say, building out my program, I would give myself goals maybe related to like filming part of the material, or I would give myself goals around actually building the content in like PowerPoint or something. Or I would give myself goal for like batching some content. So it was very specific goals that were achievable. Because if there's something that's very discouraging is aiming way too high and thinking that I can get all these things done in a day, and then life happens and you're like, shoot, I didn't do it. And then you start questioning yourself and if this has legs, or if this is sustainable, when in reality expectations were just too high. And so if I can encourage you and anyone who finds this very, very helpful to focus on 3 core goals, it could be even like a monthly goal that you break down into weekly goals that then breaks down into daily goals. I find that's really helpful. Like that, you're constantly making progress day after day, but you're not spreading yourself too thin. And maybe in tandem with that, Kyle, focus and decide on what are the core family personal time moments that you need to prioritize. So when I was like in that year one, I was like, okay, I want to have my time with my kids in the day. Sure, my daughter has a nap time, so I'll try to use that strategically, but it was like an hour or two. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to use my evening hours and maybe like a day on the weekend to do part of this work. And then the days are going to be open for family, just because realistically I was like homeschooling and just all over the place with the kids. But because I had those very clear goals and I knew exactly where I was structuring that in, I still made progress every week. So I think it's good to have certain goals that are realistic, but where you're still kind of pushing, right? And if anything, you just readjust the next week, or you realize, okay, you know what, this is actually something that takes me longer than I anticipated. Now I know that, and I'm going to maybe adjust that for the next time. But that's going to help you stay really well focused without spreading yourself too thin. And maybe as a final tip, practically, you know, talk with your spouse, let them know kind of where you're at, what kind of support you need from them, and vice versa. I was very open, you know, with my partner at the time and even to this day, where it's like, what do we need from each other? I was like, I might not have as much time to like do the cooking. And he was like, okay, well, I'm going to do more of the cooking, but if you can do this, we ended up actually hiring, you know, help for the home, like about a year and a half ago, which has been like a game changer for us, just because things were really building in his business, things were building in my business. And I'm like, I don't want that to sacrifice time with my family on the weekends where I'm spent cleaning and cooking and all this stuff. So we use that, but it was something that just came with time, as we were very open in our communication of what we needed as a couple, what we needed for our supporting our kids, and where we needed to focus our energy in our respective businesses. So I hope that helps, Kyle. Just a few different pointers that you can reflect on. But it's a great question. Yeah, you've got this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Love
You're
it. Love it.
welcome.
Well, that is time. Tiffany, thank you again so much for doing this. This was amazing. As you can see in the comments, how much people gain so much value from it and
Oh,
appreciative of it. So Tiffany, again, thank you so much.
thank you guys. Thank you,
yeah.
Daniel, for having me. And feel free to connect and reach out. Happy to chat more.
Tiffany, you're awesome. Thank you all for coming, and I'll see you guys next Monday. We're having another one with Gurov. He did $2.8 million in his career coaching business last year, and so he'll be willing to answer any questions you guys have. So see you guys in the next event. Bye, guys.
Bye.